What happens when a music legend walks into a morning show expecting respect but gets ambushed with disrespect instead? In just 33 seconds of one question, Michael Strahan turned what should have been a celebration into a disaster that ended with Chaka Khan walking off the set of Good Morning America. This is the story of how a simple interview turned into one of the most shocking moments in morning television history. It started like any other Tuesday morning. The Good Morning America studio was buzzing with excitement. Chaka Khan, the Queen of Funk herself, was scheduled to appear on the show to talk about her latest album and her upcoming tour. Fans had been waiting for this moment. The legendary singer, known for hits that have defined generations, was finally going to sit down and share stories about her incredible career. Chaka walked onto the set looking absolutely stunning. She wore a flowing purple outfit that sparkled under the studio lights. Her signature hair was perfectly styled. She smiled and waved at the audience, who erupted in applause. This was supposed to be her moment, a moment to shine, a moment to connect with her fans and remind everyone why she earned the title of the Queen of Funk. Michael Strahan stood up from his seat at the desk and walked over to greet her. The cameras were rolling. The audience was excited. Everything seemed perfect. They shook hands and Chaka took her seat on the famous Good Morning America couch. The bright lights illuminated her face as she settled in, still smiling, ready to share her stories. But something felt off from the very beginning. Michael sat down across from her with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. He shuffled his note cards and looked at the camera instead of at Chaka. The warmth that usually fills these morning show interviews was missing. There was a coldness in the air that even the audience could feel. Michael started the interview with what seemed like a normal question. "So Chaka, welcome to Good Morning America. It's great to have you here." His voice was flat, almost bored. Chaka nodded graciously and thanked him for having her. She began to talk about her new music, her passion for creating, and what her fans could expect from the upcoming tour. But Michael wasn't really listening. He kept looking at his cards, nodding mechanically, waiting for his turn to speak again. When Chaka paused to take a breath, he jumped in without acknowledging anything she had just said. "You know, I've been wondering something," he said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. "At your age, do you ever think about just, slowing down? Maybe retiring?" The audience went silent. You could hear the collective gasp ripple through the studio. Chaka's smile faltered for just a second. She blinked, clearly taken aback by the question, but she composed herself quickly, the professional that she is. "Well, Michael," she said calmly, "age is just a number. Music is my life. I don't see why I would stop doing what I love just because of a birthday." It was a perfect answer, graceful, dignified, exactly what you'd expect from someone who has been in the business for decades and knows how to handle difficult questions. The audience clapped in support, but Michael wasn't done. He looked down at his cards again and then back at Chaka with that same smirk. Right, he said, waving his hand dismissively. "But I mean, let's be real here. The music industry has changed so much. Do you really think people still care about the kind of music you make? I mean, it's pretty dated, don't you think?" The air in the studio became thick with tension. Chaka's face hardened. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she processed what he had just said. This wasn't journalism. This wasn't a tough but fair question. This was disrespect, pure and simple, and everyone watching knew it. "Dated?" Chaka repeated slowly, her voice controlled, but you could hear the edge creeping in. "Michael, the music I create has influenced generations of artists. The songs I've made are timeless. They're played at weddings, parties, celebrations, all over the world. That's not dated, that's legacy." She paused, giving him a chance to apologize, to walk it back, to show some basic respect. But he didn't. Instead, he chuckled. Actually chuckled. Like what she said was amusing to him. Like her decades of artistry and contribution to music were some kind of joke. "Legacy? Sure," Michael said, still wearing that infuriating smirk. "But let's talk about relevance. When was the last time you had a hit? I mean, a real hit that people under 30 actually know?" The audience was shocked into silence. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few looked at each other with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were hearing. This was Chaka Khan he was talking to, the woman who gave the world "I'm Every Woman" and "Ain't Nobody," the woman who has won 10 Grammy Awards, the woman who has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And here was Michael Strahan, a former football player turned morning show host, questioning her relevance. Chaka took a deep breath. You could see her trying to maintain her composure. She sat up a little straighter, her hands folded in her lap. "Michael, I think you're confusing relevance with what gets played on top 40 radio. My music reaches people of all ages. I sell out concerts. My fans are loyal and passionate. Just because you don't hear my songs between commercials doesn't mean I'm not relevant." It was another perfect response. Calm, factual. She was taking the high road even though Michael clearly didn't deserve it. But instead of moving on, instead of showing even a shred of professionalism, Michael decided to dig deeper. Okay, he said, holding up his hands like he was trying to calm her down, even though she was completely calm. "Don't get defensive. I'm just asking questions. Here, it's what we do on morning television. We have conversations." "Defensive?" Chaka repeated, and now you could really hear the anger simmering beneath her words. "I'm not being defensive, Michael. I'm responding to your disrespectful questions with facts." "There's a difference." Michael rolled his eyes. He actually rolled his eyes at Chaka Khan on live television. "Come on now," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're a guest on this show. The least you could do is have a sense of humor about yourself. We're all just having fun here." That was the moment. That was when something shifted in Chaka's expression. The politeness dropped away. The professional mask slipped. She wasn't angry. She was done. Completely and utterly done with this interview, this host, and this entire disrespectful situation. "Fun?" she said quietly, her voice steady but cold. "You think insulting my career and my music on national television is fun?" Michael shrugged, completely oblivious to the gravity of what he had done. "I mean, if you can't handle a little criticism, maybe doing interviews isn't for you. Not everyone is going to kiss your feet just because you're Chaka Khan." The audience gasped again, louder this time. A few people even started booing. The producers in the control room must have been panicking, but Michael just sat there, looking pleased with himself. Like he had just delivered some brilliant piece of television gold. Chaka stared at him for a long moment. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. Then, slowly, she reached up and unclipped the microphone from her outfit. She placed it carefully on the table in front of her. She stood up, smoothed down her purple outfit, and looked directly into the camera. "To my fans watching this," she said, her voice clear and strong, "thank you for your love and support. You deserve better than this. And so do I." Then she turned to Michael, who was finally starting to realize that something had gone very wrong. His smirk was gone. He looked confused, uncertain. "Wait, what are you doing?" he asked. Chaka didn't answer him. She didn't owe him an explanation. She simply turned and walked off the set with her head held high. The audience erupted in applause and cheers. Some people stood up. They knew they had just witnessed something historic. They knew they had just seen a legend refuse to be disrespected. Michael sat there, frozen, unsure of what to do. His co-host looked mortified. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of his shock and confusion. He stammered something about going to commercial, but his voice lacked any authority. He had lost control of his own show. As Chaka walked through the studio toward the exit, crew members stepped aside. Some of them nodded at her with respect. One camera operator even gave her a thumbs up. She smiled at them, a real genuine smile, and kept walking. She didn't storm off. She didn't throw a tantrum. She simply refused to participate in her own humiliation. Behind her, the studio descended into chaos. Producers rushed onto the set. Michael's co-host tried to salvage the segment. The audience was still buzzing with energy, talking amongst themselves about what they had just witnessed. But Chaka was already gone, out of the building, into her car, and away from the toxic environment that Good Morning America had become that morning. The beauty of what Chaka did was in its simplicity. She didn't yell, she didn't curse, she didn't throw anything or make a scene. She just left. And in doing so, she made a statement that was louder than any argument could have been. She showed that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to engage, refuse to accept disrespect, refuse to let someone diminish your worth. Michael had started the interview thinking he was in control. He had his note cards, his smirk, his platform. He thought he could say whatever he wanted because he was the host and she was the guest. But what he failed to understand was that respect isn't about who has the power in a situation. It's about basic human decency. It's about recognizing someone's accomplishments and treating them with the dignity they've earned. Chaka Khan has been in the music industry for over 5 decades. She has seen it all. She has worked with the greatest musicians of multiple generations. She has performed for presidents and royalty. She has inspired countless artists who came after her, and through all of that, she has maintained her dignity and her self-respect. She wasn't about to let a morning show host take that away from her. What made the situation even more outrageous was that Michael seemed genuinely confused about why Chaka was upset. He kept insisting that he was just asking questions, and that she should have a sense of humor. But there's a difference between asking tough questions and being deliberately insulting. There's a difference between having a sense of humor and being the butt of someone's joke. Michael's questions weren't designed to illuminate or inform, they were designed to belittle. He asked about her age, not because it was relevant to her music, but because he wanted to suggest she was too old. He asked about relevance not to have a real conversation about the changing music industry, but to imply that she no longer mattered. He dismissed her answers, not because they were inadequate, but because he had already decided what narrative he wanted to push. This is what made Chaka the hero of this story. She recognized what was happening. She understood that this wasn't a real interview. It was an ambush, and she refused to play along. She could have stayed. She could have gotten angry. She could have argued with him point by point, but she knew that would have been giving him exactly what he wanted. Drama, conflict, a chance to paint her as difficult or temperamental. Instead, she took away his power by simply leaving. She denied him the confrontation he was clearly trying to provoke, and in doing so, she made him look exactly like what he was, a bully who had pushed too far and lost his guest. The way Michael acted during that interview revealed so much about his character. He treated Chaka Khan, a woman who has achieved more in music than most people dream of, like she should be grateful just to be on his show. He acted entitled to her time and her patience, even as he disrespected everything she had built. He thought his position as host gave him the right to say whatever he wanted without consequences. But Chaka taught him a valuable lesson that morning. Respect is not automatic, it's earned, and it can be lost in an instant. No matter how big the platform, no matter how famous the host, no one has the right to treat another person with contempt. And when they do, the other person has every right to walk away. Think about the courage it took for Chaka to do what she did. She was on live television. Millions of people were watching. Walking off set is not something that happens often, and when it does, it makes headlines. She knew that her decision would be talked about, analyzed, and debated. But she also knew that staying would mean compromising her self-respect. And for her, that wasn't an option. The audience's reaction told the whole story. They didn't boo Chaka. They didn't think she was being difficult or unprofessional. They applauded her. They cheered for her because they understood what she was doing. She was standing up for herself in a situation where she was being treated unfairly. And people respect that. People admire that. Michael's attempts to frame his questions as harmless or playful fell completely flat. No one was buying it. Asking someone if they should retire because of their age is not playful. Calling someone's music dated is not harmless. Suggesting that someone is no longer relevant is not just having fun. These are insults dressed up as questions, and everyone could see right through them. What's particularly galling is that Michael tried to turn it around on Chaka, suggesting that she was the one being difficult by not accepting his criticism. But criticism is supposed to be constructive. It's supposed to come from a place of genuine engagement with someone's work. What Michael was doing wasn't criticism, it was mockery. And there's nothing constructive about that. Chaka's response to all of this was masterful. She didn't give Michael the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. She didn't let him paint her as an angry diva. She simply stated her boundaries clearly and then enforced them by leaving. It was dignified, it was powerful, and it was completely justified. The fact that Michael seemed surprised by her departure shows how entitled he had become. He genuinely thought he could say those things without any real consequences. He thought Chaka would just sit there and take it because that's what guests are supposed to do. But Chaka Khan is not just any guest. She's a legend. And legends don't tolerate disrespect. Throughout the entire exchange, Chaka tried to give Michael opportunities to course correct. She answered his first insulting question gracefully. She responded to his second dig with facts about her legacy. She pointed out his disrespect directly, giving him a chance to apologize. But at every turn, he doubled down. He got more condescending, more dismissive, more disrespectful. His comment about her being defensive was particularly infuriating. It's a classic tactic used by people who want to insult others without taking responsibility for it. They say something offensive, and when the person responds with anything other than total acceptance, they accuse them of being too sensitive or defensive. It's gaslighting at its finest, and Chaka wasn't having it. When Michael said that not everyone would kiss her feet just because she's Chaka Khan, he revealed what this was really about. He resented her. He resented her accomplishments. He resented her status. And he wanted to cut her down to size. But what he failed to realize is that her status isn't about ego. It's about achievement. It's about decades of hard work. It's about the joy her music has brought to millions of people. Chaka doesn't need anyone to kiss her feet, but she does deserve basic respect. And that's all she was asking for. The fact that Michael couldn't or wouldn't provide even that bare minimum says everything about him and nothing about her. The moment when Chaka unclipped her microphone was so powerful because of its finality. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. She made her decision and acted on it immediately. That microphone represented her participation in the interview, and by removing it, she was making it clear that she was done participating. The message was unmistakable. Her statement to the fans was perfect too. She didn't trash the show. She didn't attack Michael personally. She simply thanked her supporters and said they deserved better. It was classy, it was gracious, and it put the focus where it belonged, on the people who truly matter, her fans. Michael's confused reaction in those final moments was almost comical if it weren't so sad. "Wait, what are you doing?" he asked, as if her actions were completely incomprehensible. But they weren't incomprehensible at all. They were the natural consequence of his behavior. He had spent the entire interview pushing her, testing her, disrespecting her, and when she finally had enough, he acted shocked. The applause from the audience as Chaka walked away was the final verdict. They knew who was in the right. They knew who had handled the situation with grace and who had handled it with arrogance. Their cheers were for Chaka, and their silence during Michael's stammering was for him. This entire incident is a reminder of why Chaka Khan is called the Queen of Funk. It's not just about her music, though her music is incredible. It's about her strength, her dignity, her refusal to compromise who she is for anyone. She built her career on being authentic, on being powerful, on being unapologetically herself. And that morning, on Good Morning America, she showed everyone exactly what that means. Michael Strahan learned a hard lesson that day. You cannot treat people, especially legends, with contempt and expect them to smile and accept it. You cannot use your platform to belittle others without facing consequences. And you cannot mistake someone's professionalism for weakness. Chaka Khan is many things, but weak is not one of them. The interview that was supposed to be a celebration of Chaka's new music and upcoming tour became instead a demonstration of how not to treat a guest. It became a masterclass in maintaining dignity under pressure. It became a moment that will be remembered not for anything Michael said, but for what Chaka did in response. Walking off that set was an act of self-respect. It was Chaka saying, "I know my worth, and I will not let you diminish it." It was her drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This far and no further." And it was her showing young artists, young women, young people everywhere that it is okay to walk away from situations where you are not being treated with respect. The power of that moment cannot be overstated. In a world where people are often told to just put up with disrespect, to be professional no matter what, to never make waves, Chaka Khan stood up and said no. She said that professionalism goes both ways. She said that respect is not optional. And she said it in the most effective way possible, with her actions rather than just her words. Michael tried to control the narrative by saying she couldn't handle criticism. But this wasn't about criticism. This was about basic human decency. And the fact that he couldn't see the difference is exactly why Chaka was right to leave. You cannot have a productive conversation with someone who doesn't respect you. You cannot educate someone who doesn't want to learn. Sometimes the best thing you can do is remove yourself from a toxic situation, and that's exactly what Chaka did. The Queen of Funk walked into Good Morning America that morning expecting a normal interview. She prepared to talk about her music, her passion, her art. She came ready to connect with fans and share her excitement about her new work. Instead, she was met with condescension, disrespect, and arrogance. And rather than accepting that treatment, she chose herself. She chose her dignity. She chose to walk away with her head held high. That's the real story here. Not that an interview went wrong. Not that there was conflict on live television, but that a legendary artist knew her worth and refused to accept anything less than the respect she deserved. Chaka Khan reminded everyone watching that you should never let anyone treat you as less than you are, no matter who they are, no matter what platform they have, no matter what. Michael Strahan had all the power that morning. He had the desk, the cameras, the lights, the audience. But Chaka Khan had something more important. She had self-respect. And in the end, that's what won. That's what everyone remembered. Not Michael's smug questions, not his entitled attitude, but Chaka's dignified exit. Her refusal to participate in her own disrespect. Her moment of pure, unshakable strength. This is how the Queen of Funk handles disrespect, with grace, with dignity, and with the absolute certainty that she deserves better. And that's a lesson everyone can learn from.